Welcome to another edition of the Debbie Delight, brought to you by expandtheboxscore.com. I am your host, Ricky Valera. On today's episode, we're going to continue on with our position and player profiles, and we're going to continue on with the wide receiver position inside the Big Ten. As always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Stoops. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Had a blast covering the incoming rookies, over the last couple of weeks, going through all the draft stuff. That was a lot of fun. But excited to get back into the Devy aspect of it, kind of what we've been doing for months now, really. Doing it for a while, so excited to get back into the Big Ten. Definitely the receivers.
Yeah, for me as well. Like it was nice talking about the guys. It's nice getting into the draft class. It's talking about their landing spots and stuff like that. But I feel like we have enough material out there for you guys to hear, for us to go into your pending rookie drafts. We have a lot. We had the entire episode the week before where we talked about the class as a collective whole. Last week we gave you some spoilers. So I'm rather excited to kind of really just jump into this class again, which there's a lot of talent inside the Big Ten. I didn't know this until I knew this a little bit, but I forgot about it. Like Brian Hartline's the wide receiver coach in Ohio State, which, the same Brian Hartline that used to be, the wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Like, it's kind of crazy to me to watch Ohio State kind of turn into wide receiver U. I think every draft since 2012, they've had a wide receiver taken in the draft, that's a pretty impressive stat. You know what I'm saying? So it's pretty crazy. And of course, the big news of the last 24 hours is Tua's little brother, Taolia, entered the transfer portal. For me personally, and I'll let you give your opinion, it doesn't really come much of a surprise, right? Yeah. Bryce Young is legit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that he realized that he was not going to be able to take that job.
Yeah, I think a lot of it might have been so coming in as a freshman, which is where he was. It's hard to start unless you are one of those 5-star top prospects. And obviously having Tua there, your older brother, you're not starting over him, obviously. And then even having Mac Jones there, he probably wasn't even going to start over him. So the competition was definitely deep. It's not a shock to me either that he's transferring out. It's just going to be interesting to see where he goes. You got to think he's going to try and go somewhere where he can play immediately, where he can start, So does that mean he leaves the SEC altogether? Does that mean he goes to a lower tiered program in the SEC? Like, I'm just interested to see if he even leaves conference. Cause I know sometimes programs will try and put some form of like a block on a player to where you can't go in the conference, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if Saban would necessarily do that. Maybe he would. But I'm interested to see, and I have not heard any rumors or seen anything about where potential landing destinations are. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think he's got the talent, it's there, but at the same time, we haven't seen him fully on the college football field. So I don't know, man. It's not shocking. Ultimately, It's not shocking at all.
No, not at all. I think that he has the ability to make plays and stuff like that, but like he's going to have to, I think that he has to go down to one of these lower schools, not lower, the Division II. I'm just talking about one of these smaller schools where he's going to have the opportunity to walk in and play, because right now entering the transfer portal right now is kind of scary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like in this time frame, this is a lost year again for him, really, if you think about it. You know what I mean? Like it's already almost June. The season is potentially starting rather soon as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen this year. You know what I mean? With college football as a collective whole, it's kind of scary to think that, are we going to get a season? If we do get a season, what kind of season we look like? I'm at a point now where I'm like, I really don't care whether there's fans in the stands or not. Just get football, please. Like, please, pretty please.
Well, and the other thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like JT Daniels, he's still in the portal, right? He hasn't committed to a school. So, and I would put, if I was a college coach, a college program, personally, I'd rather have JT Daniels. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that would be a spot that could have been a potential fit for him that's gone now. So I don't know. It's just a weird time. One, because of what's going on in the world, and two, it's just kind of later into the aspect of everything. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that all pans out in the end.
I agree 100%. I'm excited about it, but let's go ahead and talk about these Big Ten wide receivers and go ahead and kick us off with your receiver.
Yeah, so the guy that I'm going to touch base on is David Bell out of Purdue. He was a four-star prospect coming out of high school. He was the 113th ranked player in his class, 19th ranked wide receiver, and number 2 ranked player in Indiana, 6'2", 210. So got some good size to him. I like the weight, 210. I'm sure he'll put on a little bit more weight as well. Last season, he had a 26% dominator rating. He had an absolutely phenomenal year. What I did notice, though, and I was very curious about this. So Rondell Moore played early on, right? He played early in the season, and then he ended up getting hurt, and kind of missed the remainder of the season. Played basically weeks 1 through 3, and then week 5 as well. That's Rondell Moore. First 2 weeks, Rondell Moore just blew it up, right? He did exactly what we thought he would do, which is absolutely phenomenal, which ate into what David Bell was doing. So when Rondell Moore essentially wasn't there anymore per se, that's when David Bell really, really kicked things off. Because the first couple of weeks, Bell just had some mediocre stats. I mean, I think he had a game with like 87 receiving yards. That's no slouch at all. But week 5 against Minnesota, that's when he had his real breakout game. He had 16 targets, 9 receptions, only 56.3 catch percent there, but he had 126 receiving yards, counted for 6 first downs. He had, and then from there it just went up. Next week 7 against Maryland, 138 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Iowa, he had 17 targets, 13 receptions, 197 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then from there, Northwestern and Wisconsin, he had 20 targets. Those were Rondell Moore's stats, right? He was getting those type of targets. So David Bell literally jumped in and took those targets that Rondell Moore was going to have and essentially had that same type of season. So I absolutely loved what I saw from there. And a part of me, when I was going through this, I was a little bit concerned with Rondell Moore coming back. How is that going to work? But I look at other programs, right? 2 receivers of that caliber talent, it's going to be scary. You've got 2 receivers that are capable of getting. So, for example, if a quarterback throws the ball, let's call it 35 times a game, you got to think those guys combined are getting 90% of the targets. So it's one of those things where they both could see 13 to 17 targets a game, could both go for 100 plus yards and a touchdown each, right? That's something phenomenal. That opens up the running game. It's going to help the offense as a whole. So I'm actually very, very excited to see how they play together on the field. And a guy that we'll get into later, it was voted on Twitter, but the Rashad Bateman thing, I'll get into it. But him and Tyler Johnson showed that to me, right? 2 receivers can make it happen. And there's other programs that have done it. So it's not just them. But loved what I saw from David Bell. On the field, loved his stats. On 1st and 10 plus, he had 57 targets, 40 receptions, 537 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns, accounted for 17 first downs. So we always say this, right? Those top targets, those top talents out on the programs, 1st and 10 is where they get targeted early, often, and all the time, right? So he made it happen. He got it done. Absolutely loved seeing that. The question I'm going to have for Purdue is the question is who's going to be their starting quarterback is ultimately the question. I hope they don't pull a TCU, right? Because I went and looked at it. So Jake Plummer, he played weeks 3 and then he played weeks 5 through 10.
Is that Jake Plummer's son, isn't it?
I didn't look into it, but I just assumed yes. I should have looked into it, so I don't know. But I assumed yes because the name's very close and the last name obviously matches. But the other quarterback they had, Aiden O'Connell, he played week 6 and then 9 through 11, and then he played 13 and 14 as well. They had almost identical stats, not quite. Jack Plummer, he had over 1,600 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. O'Connell had almost 1,100 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So it's kind of like they played about the same amount of time. And then they had a senior quarterback. I forgot his name, but it was kind of the same situation, right? They all had almost the same amount of stats. So to me, you've got to find that one quarterback, right? It's the chemistry. That's huge on the high school, college, professional level, no matter where you're at. That's huge. You got to build that chemistry. So I'm hoping they narrow it down to one receiver. Plummer's going to be a sophomore. O'Connell's going to be a junior. And then, like I said, that other quarterback, I forgot his name, but he was a senior last year, so he's out. So it's just one of those where I hope they can, narrow it down to one quarterback. But David Bell amongst himself looking, let me scroll over because my computer's not working now. There we go. We're talking, yeah, in the red zone. He had 23 targets inside the red zone, 14 receptions, 101 yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns inside the red zone. So they use him in the red zone. They use him outside of the red zone even. He had 73 catches outside the red zone for 2 touchdowns. So I love to see that. They do get him the ball in the rushing aspect. Not a lot, right? He's not necessarily a focal point in that, but they get him some touches in the aspect of running it. 3 attempts, 12 yards, and he did have a rushing touchdown. So you got to love seeing that. When you look at his touches by yardage, he had 49 touches that went for 8 yards or more. That's 54.4% of his total touches that go for 8 yards or more. So that's just absolutely phenomenal number to see. When you look at his 21 plus yards, he had 14 touches. That's 15.6% of his total touches, going for 21 yards or more. So he's one that can get it done, on the big play aspect of it, but he can also get it done in those short yardage when you need those first downs. I absolutely love seeing that. Accounted for 45 first downs coming from a receiver. You don't see necessarily that number as high, as a running back, and obviously not as much as a quarterback because they're involved way more. But those are numbers that I absolutely love to see. So for me, biggest thing's going to be Purdue just kind of figuring out their quarterback situation. Hopefully they get one and stick with them and don't pull a TCU to where it's just, one half it's this guy, the next half it's another guy, and then let's change it to another guy next week. It's just it's confusing. It hurts the chemistry of the team, especially on the offensive side. So I definitely think they need to narrow it down to one guy. But seeing a healthy Rondale Moore, we've seen what he can do, and then obviously having David Bell on the field as well. I think they're going to be a scary duo, and I think they're only going to help each other, which is absolutely phenomenal. And again, a scary thought to think about because they've both put up 1,000 plus. Receiving yards, because Rondale Moore's 2018 stats, he had 1,100 receiving yards, 12 receiving touchdowns, 44 first downs. So it's kind of like they're putting up similar numbers. So they've got the abilities and they're going to help each other out. Rondale Moore is definitely a little bit smaller of a guy. I think he's 5'9", 5'10" range. So David Bell's a little bit taller. So they're playing different aspects of the field, but they're going to help each other out. So David Bell, he's not a hidden name. We've talked about him. Others have talked about him via Twitter, but he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Watch some film when you can, and I absolutely love David Bell. I got him in our Devy League, right? He was one guy that I was really targeting that I wanted to go after, and I don't remember the cost I got him. I think it, of course, kept getting bid up and up, but I got him. I'm happy about that. So definitely gonna be excited to see what they do on the field with him this year.
Yeah, dude's talented, and if they can get a consistent quarterback, man, they're going to be deadly. That quarterback's only going to enhance himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're only going to enhance their stock if they can get these two guys the ball consistently week in and week out. The guy I'm going to talk about is Chris Olave. Not Olive like I wanted to say, but Stoops on the air, so he said that I had to say it right. 6'1", 185, 3-star prospect. The more I watch, okay, so I did a lot of film study on Justin Fields this week. Okay, I was watching a lot of Justin Fields, and just like whenever you watch your quarterback, you're seeing him throw to receivers. And there's so much to like about Olave that really makes me happy. Last season, 73 targets, 49 catches, 849 yards, 12 touchdowns, 17.3 yards per catch, 24% dominator rating, which led the team last year, which is impressive enough considering the other guys around him. 33 of his 49 targets resulted into first downs. Austin Mack, KJ Hill, Benjamin Victor are all gone now. Okay, every single one of them's gone. That's 166 targets. That's 118 catches up for grabs right now. Obviously, he's not going to get all of those, but I'm just saying he was second in the team in targets already without these guys, with these guys on the team. Now you take J.K. Dobbins out of the mix as well. Fields is going to throw the ball a little bit more, I think, this year than he did in years past. I understand they have Teague, and I know they have Sermon coming in as well. But I still think that they're going to try to showcase Fields a little bit more because this is his year. This is his time to shine. This is his time to, put his name in the ranks of some of the best quarterbacks heading into this draft class, which I truly think that he is. But he also possesses amazing hands. His hands are truly amazing. And then the Fields put the ball up in the air, and Olave, every single time he just came down with the ball. It's just who he is. His route running is beautiful to watch. His footwork off the line is very nice. mentioned this to you off the air, but I didn't realize that Brian Hartline, the former receiver, is turning Ohio State into like, wide receiver U out there. Listening to Hartline talk about Olive, he said that there's not a single guy on that team that works harder to get better at his position than he does, Olive does. And he works harder and harder at getting better and better. And the funny thing about it is listening to him talk about him, and then I watched an interview. Olive said he wants to win the Heisman. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be the best player in college football. He wants to be one of the first players taken off the board in the draft. That's the kind of attitude that you want out of your guys, right? So big-time receiver. Okay, so wide receiver, we look into their statistics against opponents, right? Versus top 25 opponents last year, 19 catches, 349 yards, 5 touchdowns. Okay. Digging deeper into his stats, this is only going to get crazier as you listen to these guys. 25% of his catches went for 21 or more yards. 46% of those catches went for touchdowns. 49% of his catches total went for 14 or more yards, and then 78% of his total catches on the season went for 8 or more yards. So you're thinking 70, one in almost 8 times he's catching the ball, he's getting 8 or more yards with the football, right? In 13 games in 2019, he scored touchdowns in 9 of them, including 3 multi-touchdown games. For a guy that's 6'1", his red zone capability is second to none. It's beautiful. 10 catches with 8 of them converting for touchdowns. That to me is insane, right? You think when you hear stats like that, you're thinking, all right, I've got a 6'3", 6'4", maybe even a 6'5" receiver that's in the red zone, big body. But that's not him. Olive is 6'1", 185. I would like to see this man put on a little bit of weight, just because at 6'1", he's not really that beefy. And I really think that he will. I think he'll put on another 10 pounds before he comes out next year, which wouldn't really surprise me at all. So digging deeper into the red zone stats, he on 3rd and goal, he had 2 catches, both for touchdown. Again, that's clutch. That's clutch stats right there. You know what I mean? In the red zone, it's clutch. Fields looked for Olive consistently on first down. 46% of his catches came on 1st and 10. Another beautiful stat to think about. Over 57% of his targets thrown to him last year went for 10-plus yards beyond the line of scrimmage and had 2 or more steps of separation on the cornerback, which led both the country and was 23% points higher than the average in college football last year. That to me is impressive, folks. 57% of his targets were thrown 10-plus yards beyond the line of scrimmage. But not just that, he had 2 or more steps of separation on the cornerback that was covering. Again, that shows his capability of being a next-level wide receiver. This guy's slowly creeping up draft boards. He's slowly creeping up my draft board because as I'm watching him play, this kid is good. And I really feel like with 166 targets out the door, even if at 73 targets last year, I still think even at 73 targets, at 17 catches per, we're going to see Olive. He should be over 1,000 yards this year, obviously, right? I think he hits double-digit touchdowns again, right? But the fact of the matter is this, it's ripe for the picking for him to have another solid season. There's one little tidbit that I want to leave you with on Olive before I'm done talking about him, but this is crazy. You find random tidbits about him, but last year, Olive actually blocked a punt, and it was returned for a touchdown last year. Nice. So he didn't return it, but he blocked a punt last year. Again, shows his ability to be a playmaker on the football field. So I loved it. I love seeing little small stuff like that out of wide receivers. You know what I'm saying? Blocking a punt, first off, is not easy, especially when you're playing Madden. I can never make it happen. Yeah, so, and that's the thing. I mean, I know we're talking about Madden, but I'm just throwing that out there that I've never been good at blocking punts. So it's hard to imagine doing it in real life. But I love Olive. I think that he's super talented. I think that he's going to be next level. I think he's going to be one of the first 3 or 4 receivers taken off the board as long as this year goes as projected for him.
Yeah, and he's definitely a guy that obviously, Matt Bruning, he's been one that really talks him up, but that's for obvious reasons. But he's a guy that definitely should be talked about more, right? Obviously we dig a little bit deeper into the Devy aspect of it, to where we're talking about, lower class guys per se, but now he's going to become draft eligible. He's going to be able to, or he is draft eligible, but he's going to make it happen. I'm just excited to see what the Ohio State offense does as a whole. They've got so many weapons that I think that's going to open up him as well. Which is, again, kind of that aspect where I was talking about, right? Where it's the more weapons you have, the more that these guys are going to be open, or at least not double covered, not triple covered, anything like that. So they're going to have to account for some other options. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do in that offense.
All right. So you kind of spoiled it a little bit earlier, which is fine. But let's talk a little bit about the fan pick this week, which I think he won by a massive landslide of like over 70% of the votes, which it was kind of funny because I really, really was kind of excited to talk about some of these other guys that were mentioned. I'm trying to look at the poll real quick. I was going to try to butcher these names live on the air for you guys. But we were going to try to talk about Wap Filior and then Josh Immature Bebe. I love it. I love how to say his name. That's how you say his name. It's Immature Bebe. And I'm like, this is the greatest name ever. Like, can we just talk? And I felt the need to mention his name at least 6 times before we start talking about Bateman, who got 74% of our votes. So go ahead and start off with some Bateman stats for these guys.
Yeah, and we expected it to happen, right? When we put his name in there, we expected it to happen. But yeah, Rashad Bateman's the guy we're going to talk about. He was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. He was 367th ranked player in his class, 61st ranked wide receiver, and 40th ranked player in Georgia. So that to me is just, for what he has came out and done, it's just crazy to see. And we see it all the time, right? Some lower ranked guys come out and just fit in. We always talk about it, picking the right school. Right. It seems as if he's done that. And obviously with some of the hires and that coaching staff, that kind of changed the landscape of the program in a good way. So definitely love seeing that there. But he's 6'2", 210 as well. Love the size. I love what he's able to do on the field. Looking into his stats a little bit. So freshman season, 49 receptions, 670 yards, 6 touchdowns, 21 first downs. This most recent season took a huge jump, right? He had 60 receptions for 1,219 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns, 42 first downs. When you look at the red zone production, he doesn't necessarily have as many targets as some other guys, but his catch percentage is pretty phenomenal. 13 targets, 9 receptions, 69.2% there, 108 yards, 6 touchdowns inside the red zone. Absolutely loved seeing that, and that's just from last season. When you look at the total for his career, 23 targets, 13 receptions, 135 yards for 9 receiving touchdowns. So he's definitely someone that is used inside the red zone. They definitely get him the ball wherever they can and definitely whenever they need him most, right? So that's something you love to see. This is a number, and I look at it for everybody, right? Running backs and receivers, but the touches by yards. Normally, you'll see it, kind of one way or the other, whether it's, short yardage or deep plays. One thing I found absolutely insane. So I'm going through and clicking in the numbers, right? So I'm just going to negative. He had 1 touch, 0 to 3, 1 touch, 4 to 7, 4 touches. That's 6 touches of 7 yards or less. So therefore 54 of his touches, which is 90%, went for 8 yards or more, right? We usually see that number in the 40 to 60 range, let's call it. And we're kind of like, man, that's phenomenal. 90% of his touches went for 8 yards or more. 20 of his touches, which is 33.3%, have gone for 21 yards or more. And basically of his touchdowns, 10 of 11 of his touchdowns from this recent season went for 8 yards or more, and 5 of those went for 21 yards or more. So he just he's kind of do it all, right? You know what I mean? I still would call 8 yards essentially close to that short yardage gain, because it may not get you a first down, but it obviously can keep a drive going and get you those first downs. So I absolutely love seeing that. When you look at his down and distance performance, 1st and 10, he saw 83 targets. That's huge. That's phenomenal. 51 receptions, 901 yards for 4 touchdowns, and accounted for 31 first downs on 1st and 10 plus. That's huge. You go to 2nd and 10 plus, right? 23 targets, 18 receptions, 313 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns for 11 first downs. He's targeted on those key downs, right? So even on 3rd and 10 plus, 18 targets, 10 receptions, 245 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So it's just numbers like that I absolutely love to see. When you look at his big game performances just as a whole, He had 5 games where he had over 100 yards here. All of them he had a receiving touchdown. South Dakota State, 132 yards, 1 touchdown. Fresno State, 105, 1 touchdown. Purdue, 177, 2 touchdowns. Penn State, 203, 1 touchdown. Wisconsin, 147, 1 touchdown. So those are some huge numbers that you love to see. And one thing that I watched it was the Penn State game. I was watching that before we jumped on. And this is kind of where I'm saying those 2 receivers, right? Having 2 top-notch receivers benefits both players. He benefited massively from Tyler Johnson, right? So there was one play, the knowledge and awareness of Tyler Johnson. So basically the corner. The corner was playing in press coverage on Johnson, but therefore then he blitzed. So I say press coverage, right? Because it was a blitz from him all the time. But Johnson recognized that, drops back. So therefore the corner that is covering Bateman has to drop and get Johnson. The safety was late and Bateman was wide open, 66-yard touchdown, right? So it's stuff like that where you look at it as a whole, right? Okay, cool. Rashad Bateman had a 66-yard touchdown. But when you watch the film, you see how that transpired. And the fact that Tanner Morgan recognized all of that immediately, and the running back picked up the blitz. So that was huge, right? Giving the quarterback his protection. But he was able to recognize that the corner drops down to Johnson, therefore Bateman's open, 66 yards, he's gone, right? So you got to love seeing that. He creates separation at the line very well. He's got his little moves, his hesitations, but whenever he makes his cuts, he's very aggressive with it. So therefore he creates that separation and he gets open for his quarterback. And I love seeing that. He's very clean out of his breaks. And like I said, he's aggressive with his cuts. And then even with Johnson leaving, the good thing with watching a couple of his game films is that Tanner Morgan trusts him big time, right? He throws him those 50-50 balls because he's confident that more often than not, he is going to come down with the ball, whether it be a reception or even if it's a deflection, right? It makes no difference. He trusts Bateman. He's going to get him the ball. I think he's going to definitely excel big time. He's going to have huge targets, right? He's going to have a massive amount of targets this year. We've talked about that before. The biggest thing that I want to see is what receiver is going to step up, right? There's got to be a second receiver there because when there isn't, yes, Bateman is going to get double covered. They're going to really focus on him. That's going to be huge to see. But I think in this Minnesota offense, I think that they are able to scheme things around certain players and they're going to create those plays. I know that a lot of teams have started, doing like pick plays per se. Obviously you can't do a pick like in basketball. Can't go that route with it, but at the same time, you nudge, you do whatever to get guys open. So we just want to see someone definitely step up and create, some separation to where other guys can get involved. And Bateman's not the focal point of that offense as much. He obviously still will be because he's a stud, right? They're going to focus on him. But I just want to see someone else step up. And I think him and Tanner Morgan, again, I think it's just going to be another amazing season. Bateman's going to be one of the top guys in these Devy leagues, right? Whenever it comes rookie draft time, I think he's going to be one of the top wide receivers taken in all the rookie drafts. I think even in the NFL draft, he could be one of those guys that's highly talked about. He's going to be on a lot of people's draft boards high, very high. That's just a couple things I got on him. Watching the film, the Penn State game is what really stood out to me. I loved what I saw in that one play, like I said, where Johnson created that open for him and Morgan recognized it. So I loved seeing that from him, though.
Yeah, dude is insane. Like you touched on like a lot of the stuff that I had, but like the big thing was, first off, there's 2 things that I noticed about this is, first off, Tyler Johnson was a steal for the Bucs.
Yeah.
Not only are you concerned with Godwin and Evans and Gronk in that offense, but Tyler Johnson, low-key, might get 30, 40 catches this year and kind of be an under-the-radar guy that's available in your later draft. Like, he's just non-existent, 4th, 5th round. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to be in that back part of the draft. And you got to think outside just next season, right? Tyler Johnson's going to be productive for years to come. I know that we're not talking about him, but I just felt like I needed to touch on that. That's 113 targets that are going to be gone this year for Minnesota. To me, I think the big thing with Bateman is going to be with a lot of some of these other guys. Johnson's gone. He's going to have to step up and showcase he can do it by himself, like you said. Yeah. But at the same time, somebody else is going to have to step up and kind of get him the football. Morgan and him have that great chemistry. I liked what I saw on tape between those two. I do think you're right. They're going to move him all over the football field. They're going to have to get him the ball. If they're going to be consistent and they're going to be good again this year, they're going to have to put the ball in this man's hands. He's going to have 100+ targets this year, right? Big time playmaker, like you said. That big game against Penn State, 7 for 203. Like, wow! Like, I'm sitting there watching everything he was doing. It was just like, this is an NFL receiver, right? You know what I mean? And that's what you saw a lot of it. 33% of the catches over 21 yards. That to me is insane. I saw when you started talking about that, I was like, can you? 90% of his,
It's crazy.
his catches went for 8 or more yards. That means 9 out of every 10 catches this man catch the ball went for almost a first down, right? You know what I mean? Like 4 more yards. Like, that to me was one insane stats. 8 games, 4+ catches. And you got to remember, he's producing at a high level with another receiver that had more targets than he did last year. 60 catches, 12, 19, 11 touchdowns last year. He averaged 20.3 yards a catch, guys. 20.3 yards a catch. And his stats year over year. And if you look at him, he had a lot of good stats the year before, right? In 2018, I think it was. So he had 9 more catches, only 9. Same amount of games from 2018 to 2019, 13 games. Only 9 more catches, but he had 515 more yards from 2018 to 2019. So he averaged almost 7 more yards a catch within 2019 than he did in 2018, which is impressive all in itself. 11 touchdown catches. He upgraded his touchdowns from 5. This speaks to, again, and I spoke a little bit about this early on, but this wide receiver class is going to be better than this year's. And it's crazy to think about because this year's is very, very good. It's very, very deep. But if you're talking about Chase, you're talking about Ross, you're talking about Moore, you're talking about Bateman, you're talking about Surratt, you're talking about St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Tylan Wallace, Tamar Terry, Terrence Marshall, Trevon Grimes, Tyler Vaughn, Chris Olive. We're still like, that's almost 15 guys deep, right? This team, and that's not even okay. So that's the 15 guys, right? I literally just read off your top 15 guys, right? On your board. If you read those guys off, and that does not even account for anybody that has a breakout season this year. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. Like, when we do some of these rankings, there's going to be a Joe Burrow this year, right? It might not be to the level of Joe Burrow, but there's somebody that's going to break out this year that we're not talking about. And if that guy breaks out, his receiver's probably going to break out. His running back might break out. You know what I mean? You have these other – if you look at LSU's almost entire team was drafted last year, or this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire came out, he got drafted. You know what I mean? Everybody around Burrow got drafted. The offensive lineman got drafted. Everybody's getting drafted. So there's going to be other guys that step up to the plate. But I'm talking Chris Olave versus not even in your top 15. I think Chris Olave is a wide receiver 1 in this draft class. So it's interesting to see that. But at the same time, it's still early in the process. I understand. But I'm just going off your rank, top 15. But that just shows the depth of this class. The more we dig deep, the more these guys are going to fluctuate into our rankings. But at the initial ranking of our class, top 15, he's not there. Olive is talented enough to be in that top 6 or 7, in my opinion. And as we watch him, and as he grows this season, he can move up. And there's other guys that can move up. This class is insane. I think Rashad Bateman is talented, man. He is so good. He's so great. And he's one of those guys, I feel the same way about Chase. I feel the same way about Marshall. I'm not saying LSU is going to take a huge step back this year, but I think they do. I don't think they're going to be on the same level as they were last year. They lost way too much talent to be as good. You know, coach is going to have him, coaching up. But at the same time, like, that team was one of those once-in-a-lifetime teams. When you talk about next year's draft, Jamar Chase only had 30 catches for 600 yards last year. It's like, well, go back to that 2019 tape. Take a look at that, and it shows you how good Chase is. It shows you how good Marshall is. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be a crazy season. I'm very, very excited about it. When we talked about these receivers, we're going to be talking about Olive. We're going to be talking about Bateman. We're going to be talking about Moore. We're going to talk about these guys quite often between now and next, February and March. So it's rather exciting to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, there's going to be those guys that jump out of nowhere. Like even for us, like, yeah, we got on, the train earlier, but like AGG, for example, he was a guy that wasn't in necessarily our rankings.
Oh.
And then the more we started digging in, the more we saw on him, and went from there. So yeah, currently Bateman for me, he's one of the top guys coming in this class. But at the same time, like there's going to be other guys who do jump in that we don't necessarily have right now that we're not talking about, and we'll start digging deeper into that and find out who those guys are, and watch some film and go that route. But yeah, this season, it sounds as if in some fashion there will be college football. As well as NFL, whether it be, again, you've said it before, no fans, little fans. I've even seen, this is kind of going off a little bit, but I've even seen where some people are saying only let the students go, right? Because a lot of these stadiums hold 70 to 100 plus thousand people, but like the student body, like even if you let them in and spread them out, you're still talking 15, 20,000 students plus, right? You know what I mean? Yep. So have some form of a fan base, but they're still spread out. And who knows if they even do that, right? I know that it's all about money, but at the same time, you got to look into the health aspect of it. But anyway, off of that, hopefully, it sounds as if we're going to have a football season in some fashion. So definitely want to see what we got going in here. I think the incoming freshmen, and we keep saying this even about the rookies, they're going to be the ones that probably hurt the most from this because they're not able to get onto the field or the practice field with their guys sooner about whenever they really could. So we'll see, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's one thing that I saw somebody post, and I wish I could give them credit for this, but they said the rookies from this year are going to have a down year. So come next draft, you're probably going to be able to buy some of these guys at a lower price, not remembering why the rookies had a bad year heading into the 2020 NFL season, right?
Yep.
If let's just throw it out there and say, all right, J.K. Dobbins has 200 yards rushing this year. Well, was it because he only had 200 yards rushing because they only had a short amount of time to fit him into the system, or Herbert or something? You're going to be able to buy low on some of these rookies from this upcoming or from this class right now next year because of people are quick to forget how often some of these stats go by. So, all right, folks, head on over to expandtheboxscore.com. All the stats that we talk about each and every week come from that website. It's a great a tool to unlock advanced statistics like never before. It's pretty exciting. Head on over. I've got my first piece up at ccsscouting.com. I give you my Valero top 10 2020 quarterback ratings super early. Head on over there. Give them a follow on Twitter at CCS Scouting or at CC Scouting. Give Stoops a follow at Stoops1990. Give myself a follow at Ricky Valero _. Give the show a follow at the Debbie Delight. It's been great. It's been fun. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
See y'all later.